tell you something. You got a big story, a really big story. And I dare say it's huge. We have Islamists training in Texas, ClarionProject.org, national security analyst Ryan Morrow. What is going on?
Yeah, it is a pretty big story. Basically, the Clarion Project was able to identify a radical Islamic terrorist enclave in Texas. And that's not my description. That is the description of the declassified FBI documents that we have that have been released to us and have been never before seen. So we basically were researching this group called Muslims of the Americas. Some of your listeners may know of a place called Islamburg in New York State. That is their headquarters. And we followed up on information indicating that they had branched out to Texas. And after months and months of research, we were able to find out the exact location, the front organizations that they're using, and ultimately get our hands on these FBI documents that show that the FBI is privately extremely concerned about this.
Okay, how does this happen? I mean, because I was watching the video and reading parts of this. I'm thinking to myself as I pull it up right now, because I'm sitting there thinking to myself, I see them training with weapons. Are they American citizens doing this who happen to be Muslim? Have they legally been able to do this so far? Is there a political correctness angle that nobody wants to crack down for fear of retribution? I mean, if they had Tea Party in their name and were doing these things, would the response be different? Go ahead, Ryan.
Well, basically, yes. The vast majority of them are American citizens, but a lot of them were in the prison system as well. And so you're not allowed to have guns if you're a felon, but we can't, until the authorities can prove that a specific felon has a gun, they can't go in and arrest them. So the authorities know that this type of training is going on. They know that this is a very, very radical group, but they can't do anything about it because as American citizens and as a domestic organization, they are allowed to put on military fatigue, engage in training, buy land. They're allowed to be as creepy and as extremist as they want up until the point that they do something illegal.
What is the threshold of becoming a terrorist group, and what separates them, their ideology and what they've said in the past, from have they already crossed that threshold?
Well, this is the turning point, essentially, if we are to push back against this group. The fundamental reason that they are not shut down is because Muslims of the Americas is considered a domestic organization and not a foreign one, even though their leadership is based in Pakistan. If they were designated as a foreign terrorist organization by the State Department, then the authorities would have the ability to shut these camps down, search all the trailers, and investigate every single one of those members and really clean this up. But they don't have that. So what are the three criteria for the State Department to designate them as a foreign terrorist organization? First, they have to be foreign. Like I said, the leadership's in Pakistan. We've got that covered. The second criteria is that they have to engage in terrorist activity, as they have in the past, or retain the capability to carry out a terrorist attack. The FBI documents that we have published for the first time explicitly say they have retained that capability. So the second criteria is covered. The third criteria is that they need to threaten the national security of the United States. And again, the FBI documents that we have say that they advocate jihad, holy war against the U.S. government, and perceived enemies of Islam. So all three criteria are covered. It's just a matter of getting this done bureaucratically.
Okay, and that's where I know that you're lost, and not lost, but you're frustrated. When you say getting it done bureaucratically, we sit there and go, we turn our heads like my dog does sometimes when I'm yelling at the television. And he sits there and says, well, wait, they've met you just listed, they've met them both. It happens. Boom. I mean, come on. Remember 9/11? What are we doing here?
Right, and they've actually shut down one of their terrorist camps in Colorado back in the early 1990s. Another camp in California was shut down after their charter school scam was exposed. So there's plenty of information about this. But what happened was that after the initial Colorado camp was shut down, this group stopped carrying out terrorist attacks on American soil because they said, for the sake of our network, we shouldn't overplay our hand. So we need to be smart here. And so they pulled back. And after the year 2000, the State Department stopped listing them as a terrorist group in their own annual report as a group to watch. And the State Department said, well, because of their inactivity, we're not so concerned about them anymore. So that's what we need to focus on, is the fact that we can concede the argument to the State Department, okay, so for the past 10 years, they haven't carried out some massive terrorist plot on American soil. But according to the State Department's own criteria, that's not what a group has to do to be outlawed. They just have to retain the capability, and they do retain that capability. And if your listeners really want to see an amazing special that's about to air, it's on The Blaze tomorrow night at 8 o'clock Eastern. We have a half-hour special that I contributed to, all about this organization and about these documents that we've released.
Well, it sounds fantastic as always, and once again, you've been a part of these reports before in exposing these things, and a lot of us, our jaws drop and we wonder why, and I think we'll get some of that tomorrow night. But my question to you is, have you spoken with have you reached out, have you been trying to get in touch with the leadership, asking them, what's that been like?
Do you mean the leadership of Islamberg or of our national security agency?
Of the MOA, pardon me, Muslim Americas.
Oh,
I mean,
well,
this
they
particular.
won't talk to us. They did recognize me, and they asked me who I was, but they won't talk. During my last trip to Islamberg, they boxed in our car. Some cars showed up when I was there at the Blaze. Car in the front blocked us from going forward. Cars showed up in the back, blocking us from going backward. It was an intimidation tactic. And someone came up in a car and started telling us to leave and that no one's going to talk to us. And I asked for his name, and he goes, I'm just someone telling you that we're not going to talk to you.
And your response to that incident was at that time?
I just kept asking why, and we just kept going back and forth, and saying, I'm not giving you any information. But during my prior trip to Islamberg, the first question I was asked was, hey, how are you? Are you Jewish? Because they believe Jews are examples of human Satans. That's what their leader preaches. And that Jews are behind all of their adversaries. And so when the first question they asked me was, are you Jewish? I could tell that the anti-Semitism we had heard about is true among these residents.
Yeah, that is normally not one where somebody is going to say, hey, welcome, after that, unfortunately, because we still have really disturbingly ignorant people in the world who are doing this and maybe willfully blind or dedicated fanatical about their specific hate ideology. Ryan, you mentioned watching this tomorrow night. Absolutely, I got it. What else can we do, and should there be something we expect? Are they building towards something that maybe we should be preparing for, as well as law enforcement should be preparing for?
This is a ticking time bomb. All of the ingredients are there for a terrorist campaign to be waged. You have radical beliefs in radical personnel with radical capabilities. So it's building up to something. It's just a question of, right now, is the sheikh over in Pakistan content with just ripping off his followers with all the money that they're giving him? But what happens when he dies? We don't know. But other things that you can do is you can go to clarionproject.org. We have a petition within our article that you can sign to label this group a foreign terrorist group, and really pass it around to your friends and family. They're not going to believe you at first. When you tell your friends and family about this story, they're going to think that it's exaggerated hype from some blog somewhere. But we have the FBI documents to prove it, and it's truly shocking. And again, this group says that they have 22 of these camps around the country.
We are with Ryan Morrow, clarionproject.org, national security analyst, and Ryan's been gracious enough to stay with us on his extraordinary story regarding Islamists in Texas who are training. And this is a terrorist group. It has been on the watch list before. It was taken off the watch list. Hey, real quick, Ryan, let's do a quick recap on this. The group that we're talking about, the Muslim of America, Muslims of the Americas, pardon me, is a group that is part of a greater network of groups, and it was on a terrorist watch list, but it was taken off by the State Department in what year?
In 2000. But even then, it wasn't branded as a foreign terrorist organization, so that's why it was allowed to operate. It was considered a domestic terrorist organization.
Okay. And the three criteria that you referenced in order for them to qualify as a terrorist organization, a foreign terrorist organization, are?
The first is that it needs to be foreign, and as I said, the leadership of this group is based in Pakistan. The second criteria is that they need to engage in terrorist activity, as they have in the past, or retain the capability to carry out terrorism in the future, which FBI documents we've released say they have done. And the third criteria is that they need to threaten the national security of the United States or of Americans abroad. And that they certainly do, again, as stated in these FBI documents that were just declassified and released to us.
And Ryan, they have claimed that there are 22 of these groups in the United States and around the United States.
Right. They say there's 22 of what they call their Islamic villages, which is where they buy up private property in a remote area and they live unto themselves and isolate themselves.
Okay. And the goal is for the FBI to cut through the bureaucratic process in order to make sure that they are doing their job to protect the American people. That means Muslim Americans, that means Jewish Americans, that means Christian Americans, as I say that, from these Islamists.
Right, and the FBI is investigating the group, and they've done some good work, so has the NYPD, but they really are restrained on what they can do because since this group is American citizens and they're not branded as a foreign terrorist group, they can only arrest someone when they have specific evidence of a specific crime. They can't just go into these camps, these compounds, and start searching through the trailers. In fact, in 2002, when one member of this Texas camp accidentally shot and killed another member of this Texas camp because he thought they had come under enemy attack or something, the police showed up and they were trying to investigate it, and they were denied access to the trailers. The women covered their faces so that they couldn't be seen by the police, and they were not allowed to talk to the women. So the police had to pass notes to the women to interview them through a male liaison.
And they are training, their military training, and their goal would be to launch attacks from their network of 22, ostensibly. I mean, it's conjecture to a degree, but if, as you've lined this up, I would think, okay, well, they're planning on doing something. You said a ticking time bomb?
Right, I would call it a ticking time bomb because when you have radical personnel, I mean, these people are so radical that the Muslim Brotherhood would agree that they're radical. They worship at a holy fax machine in South Carolina. They believe that their leader is a shapeshifter that changes into animals like birds in order to make sure that they're not sinning. I mean, they are really, really out there. So you have radical people with weapons in isolated communes in the United States. All the ingredients are there for a disaster.